So today I'm talking about why a car would squeal when you first start it up and some of the common causes for this and how you go about fixing it. And so what are the possible causes? Well, more than likely it's going to be a worn or damaged belt, although it can be other things. And this will include the alternator belt, the power steering belt, and the air conditioning belt. And it's also possible that the power steering unit is just going bad or it's low on fluid. It could be a loose tensioner which holds the belt tight. And it's also possible to have a bad battery or bad alternator that might be causing this. And so the first thing to do when you get this code is to go examine your belt. And they'll be located on the front of the engine, and there'll be different ones going around each of the different components, such as the alternator, power steering, and the air conditioning compressor. But you want to go examine them and just look and see if you see any cracks going on in the belt. Because when you see the cracks, the belt will also be worn and stretched out, and it's just time to replace it, basically. If you do see anything like this, or if it's been a long time since the belt's been changed in the vehicle, and they can be rated differently, they usually last around 50,000 miles or so, something along those lines. You want to check what your particular belts are rated for. But if your vehicle has over 100,000 miles and the belt's never been changed, then very likely it's time to replace the belts. But the first thing to do is go and examine the belts and be sure that they don't look all worn, cracked, and stretched out. And if the belts look okay, then the next thing you go do is go check out the power steering fluid and be sure that's correct. It's usually pretty easy to check. There can be different designs on how you check it. Some of them will have like a little dipstick type of thing that'll just show you like add if it's low or something like this, while other ones will have a label on the side saying upper level or lower level. And if this is low, then it can cause problems. And one of the ways you could tell with this also is when you go to turn the car and make like a right turn or a left turn, then you'll hear a squealing. So if it makes a squealing noise during startup, but then when you take off, you make a right-hand turn or a left-hand turn and it squeals, then very likely it's low on power steering fluid. So go and check that and be sure that the level is correct on the power steering. And it's also possible that the power steering unit has failed. So if the fluid level is correct, but it's still making that noise when you start up or when you go to make turns, then the power steering control unit might have failed and you'll want to get that checked out. So if you don't have no problems there, the power steering looks good, you're not getting no squealing when you're turning, then the next thing you can go and check is the alternator and the battery. And this will especially happen during like cold starts or things like this. But if the battery is going bad or if it's starting to fail and it's not holding a good charge, when the car first starts, the alternator might have to really work hard to produce the power that the battery usually supplies during this time. So it might put a load on it, causing the alternator belt to squeal because it's just very hard to turn. So one way you can check this, if you have a multimeter, is go test the battery with the car off. And you should be getting something like 12.20 volts to like 12.64 volts, something like that. It should be holding a good charge. And if it does look low, then you can put it on a battery charger for like an hour or so and just be sure that it's holding a good charge. And if you're unsure if the battery's good, you can take it out and take it to an automotive store and they'll test it for free. They'll put it on a charger for like an hour or so and then they'll test it. There's also a label on the battery that'll show you how long it's rated to last, which is usually like around 5 years. So if the battery's like 7, 8 years old, it might be time to replace it. But go to the battery and be sure that it's good and that it's holding the charge. And if the battery looks good, you can test the alternator by then starting up the vehicle and with the multimeter checking the output of the alternator, which should be ranging around 13.5 to 14.5 volts. And if you can Google your particular vehicle for the correct alternator output, but usually it'll range somewhere around 13.5 to 14.5 volts. So if you see that, then it's good. But if it's putting out lower than that, then it might be starting to fail or it might be starting to have a problem. But that would be something you can go and check out. And so if that all looks good, then another thing that can cause the issue is the air conditioning compressor. And if anything goes wrong inside this bearings or anything like that when this spins, then it can cause squealing. Usually it'll only squeal when you turn the air conditioning on. But keep in mind, sometimes something might have malfunctioned, such as a bearing or something like that, that's just causing it to have issues and to make a noise and squeal when you first start up. So that is something you can check, is the air conditioning compressor is not seized up or the bearings inside of here not having any issue when it's spinning. And another thing that sometimes causes issues is the tensioners. And these tensioners, they hold down onto the belt as it stretches. So as it ages, they'll press down on it so that it keeps it tight. And this tensioner is controlled by a very strong spring that just pulls in on it. If that spring starts to lose its tightness or starts to go bad, then it can cause issues because the belt will become loose and it won't be held tight all the time. So you can go and check the belt tensioner and see if it's holding the belt tight, which usually you can tell by pressing on the belt really hard and seeing if it's really super loose or not. And you can try to retighten it and see if that works. But if tightening it up doesn't work, then you might want to check out this belt tensioner to see if there's any issue going on there. And so that's basically it. I just wanted to give a real quick brief overview of the most common reasons why a car squeals when it starts up and how you could possibly go about fixing it. If you have anything to add, please comment down below. If you have any questions, ask me. I'll try to answer them. If this video helps you, please click like, please click subscribe, and have a good day.